where we are on the two modules. We'll try and think about the two modules. So the bioassessment and the analysis module. So we look at the bioassessment first of all. The 4 draft reports are in, so I have to go through those. And we had set a date of the 12th of April for that final report and the individual abstracts for that. Is that still achievable? Or do we want to look at the other dates first of all?
The abstract was meant to be the 17th, later on in the week.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh yeah, okay. 17th, that's fine. So we just hold that those 2 dates for the moment. So the final report for the 12th of April and the abstract for the 17th. Now, oh, that one seems reading. Now the monitoring program we put down on the 20th of March, that's not achievable. So what date, what do you want to do with that? Do you want to leave it after the monitoring program or what? Oh, sorry, after the bioassessment report. Anybody got any suggestions? You know your overall workload.
Yeah, I would say into April anyway would be good for the monitoring program.
Okay, well, let's look at the other dates. Hold it then, we've got everything. So on the other module then you have the chemistry report, which is joint, and then the individual abstract. And we'd actually put that down for the 12th of April as well. So do you want to shift that date a bit forward into April? That was the 12th. So we could push it to the 19th. Would that help?
Yeah, not to have everything on top of.
Yeah, you just have to spread it. So we go for that on the 19th of April. Okay. So that's the chemistry report is the 19th of April. Now, so somewhere between the 12th and the 19th, you could do the monitoring program. So you don't have too many things. 12th and the 19th. So, because I don't want to run too much towards the end of April because you have the exam. Do you have many other exams?
We have a few, yeah. Like I just noticed this morning we've another one the same week as the analysis one. And
that's the week of the 23rd. Yeah, you're doing
yeah. And there's at least one other one.
Okay, so would the monitoring program come in, say, the 16th? Then you'd have a weekend to finish off the chemistry, the 16th of April. Does that help?
Mary, how long do you think it would take us to do up the pricing and stuff for the monitoring program?
I'm going to help you right now with that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do that now so that you won't have to waste any time. Yeah, because really it's not so much about getting you to force prices, but to give you an indication of the prices so that you can write that in so that you're not totally naive when you go into industry about costs. Right. So I'm not really testing and understanding there. So I'll do that with you now in a moment. So just let's go through those again. So we're saying that the final bioassessment report is on the 12th of April. You submit the abstract for that on the 17th or on the same day if you have it ready, it doesn't matter. The monitoring program then on the 16th of April. The chemistry report on the individual abstract on the 19th of April. And then you have the open book exam on the 23rd. Is that enough of a relief?
Yeah, that looks better.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you can come back to me if you're in trouble. And we can always look towards, something being submitted later on. But it's probably better to get rid of it. The more we push it, it just there's a greater chance that it's going to, you're going to have a lot happening in any one week. Okay. Now, on the open book water analysis exam, I will give you instructions closer to the date. But it'll be in two parts. The first part has one compulsory question, and that'll be based around all the analysis and the calculations that you did with Liz in the lab. So you have your notebooks to help you with that. So that's compulsory. So that's one question. Then you have to answer 3 other questions, and you have 5 to choose from. So obviously you have the air quality, you have the soil, the stable isotope and DNA were small aspects of the module, so they'll probably be linked into a single question. You have the bacterial stuff that Sean covered with you and the practicals that went with that, and then you have other things that Liz covered with you, understanding limits of detection, understanding how you treat samples, collect samples, chain of custody, all that sort of stuff there that's equally important. I was going to put a question on to interpret data, but in fact you're doing so much of that, there's no point in you putting more data interpretation on the paper for you. You're doing it as part of the report. So that's roughly how the paper will look at the moment. We're compiling a paper, it has to go to the extern, and as soon as it's reviewed and agreed, then I'll give you an indication of the structure of the paper. Okay. So that'll be a 2-hour exam. I'll release it through My Learning, and then you upload it. Any questions on that?
So sorry, it was air quality, soil, eDNA, and what was the other part that will probably be?
Yeah, so you think what you covered. So you have all the stuff that you covered with Liz. That'll be one compulsory question, and then a question in part B as well. Then you have the microbial stuff you covered with Sean. You have the soil stuff that you're covering with Grace. Air quality that you're covering with Elke. And then you have 2 other small little elements. You did eDNA and you did stable isotopes. And that, I think, is everything. So part 1, question 1, compulsory, and you do 3 out of 5 questions in part 2. So half an hour per question should be adequate. Yeah, so your notebooks, your lab notebooks will be very useful to have.
Are they essay style questions?
Not essay, no, they'll all be short little questions. For some of them you have data to do a little bit of analysis on, the type of stuff that Liz covered with you in terms of what do you call them, standard curves and calculating standards and that sort of stuff as well. Yeah, so there's no big long essays, they're all short questions.
Okay, thank you.
Will there be an extra 20 minutes or something just to allow for scanning and sending the...
There will only be about
paper?
10 minutes.
Okay.
About 10 minutes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
thanks.
Enough time for you to download the paper and to upload it. Yeah. Are you thinking of handwriting it and then scanning it, or typing?
I would probably handwrite, just more comfortable.
Mm.
So we can type it though if we want to.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's just last time one of our exams we had to handwrite it and scan it. So I think people are just like making sure that if we do we have to handwrite it or can we scan it and all that.
You can scan it, yeah. Yeah, you can type or handwrite and scan, whichever suits you best. Okay, so that is that paper. Then the end of trimester exam for the we call it the bioassessment type module, that will be based on an essay. You'll be given 2 essays and you will do one of those, 3,000 words, so it's not huge. And as I mentioned before, there will be one element of that where you will have to write something on multiple stresses. Okay, and so with that, I will give you 10 days to complete your essay. And I'm giving instructions before that as well. So for the essays, I've outlined exactly what I would want you to cover on the essays. So that should be clear to you.
Do you know when we'll be given the essays?
I'll give you the essay at the beginning of May. As soon as we come to the end of the study week, then I'll release the essay. So probably, I think the Sunday is the 1st of May. Yeah, the Saturday or the Sunday, just at the beginning of May, I'll release those essays. And we'll have 10 days then to finish. Okay, and it's just 3,000 words. Yeah, sorry, Nasa, yeah.
How will we, or are we going to get feedback from you on the draft report before we start working on the final?
Absolutely, yes. So I will get those done at the beginning of next summer. Oopsie. Yeah, sorry for that. Yeah, I'll get those done next week.
Thanks.
Any other questions on that? Any other concerns? No. Okay. So are we happy? We are. Good. Now, just on costings, just to give you an idea. So assume that this site is located 50 kilometers from Dublin, because you're going to be estimating the travel costs. And if you use a per kilometer figure of, say, 45 cents per kilometer, 0.45 per kilometer. So if you go to this site, you have a round trip of 100 kilometers. So that's going to cost you €45 every time it goes out. Okay, suggest you put in some subsistence there. So generally you're working under a 10-hour day for that. So I can't remember what that is. I'll have to have a look at it up in the subsistence rates in UCP. I think if you're a long day, it's about €30. Send me an email, NASA, and ask me to confirm the subsistence rates. No, so it's a case of, I mean, you're working in one catchment, so you have to think about how many times you're going to visit to collect water samples. I think what we had agreed is that you collect some low flow samples and some flood water samples, so you might be visiting up to 6 times or whatever. So you have to calculate that for each time. So the best thing to do is to generate a spreadsheet to do the calculations. And ideally, 2 people should be traveling to the site for health and safety reasons. So we have subsistence, and you can assume they travel in the same vehicle. Subsistence rates for 2 people. Now, in addition to that, you will be collecting biological samples. So certainly you could take invertebrate samples from whatever number of sites you have, 4 or 5 in a day. And maybe you would also on that same day, collect your first batch of water chemistry, so you're cutting down on the costs there. Okay, now water analysis costs. It very much depends on what you want to analyze for. But if you wanted to do, say, phosphate, ammonium nitrite, nitrate, pH, conductivity, BOD, alkalinity, so, you know, about 10 determinants would cost you about €50 per sample. If you take that as a rough estimate. So that's for the general determinants, just on water. If you wanted to do heavy metals, and you want to do a large suite of heavy metals, that could cost you up to another €40 per sample. So if you pick that as a sort of a ballpoint figure. And if you want to do heavy metal analysis, say on tissues, if you want to do, you know, your lead, zinc, copper, chromium, cadmium, mercury, so that sort of suite, then think you're talking about another €40 per sample. If you want to do heavy metal analysis on sediment, you're talking about also in that region per sample. If you want to propose doing, you know, PAHs, volatile organic carbon, and those, you're talking about up to €30 per sample, depending on how many you want to analyze. But as a rough indication, that's where the figures would lie. So,
Mary,
yeah.
Sorry, Louise, you go.
Thanks. Do we need to say what VOCs and then what PAHs we're going to analyze? We'd have to specify.
What you normally do is a scan for them, and if you go to the presentation that's on Brightspace, then it'll indicate the most common types, and I think highlight that they would be they would be for the priority for analysis. I think there's about 3 or 4 that are that are commonly encountered.
Perfect. And when we're saying which 3 or 4 we're analysing, are we saying that in the first section, the pollutant section in the table, or whereabouts would you like us to specify
what you want to analyse? Is it?
Yeah. So if we're say the first table we have like VOCs and PAHs, then we should specify there which ones we want to analyse.
Yeah, that would be useful. See, in your introduction, you're saying what are the likely pollutants, and then you're going on to the next section. You say, well, what am I going to analyze? So, based on what you've learned in the introduction, you could make a table of what you're going to analyze for the pollutants.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
And then, yeah. But generate an Excel spreadsheet to do the cost. Don't put the cost in on that table. But go in on that table if you're mentioning VOCs, then what VOCs? If you're mentioning heavy metals, what heavy metals? And you have learned in your background information just where are the heavy metals coming from and what are the common heavy metals that you could encounter. So then it'll be clear when you go on to produce your table. What I found in the past is often people have a great introduction to all of these potential pollutants, and then when they come to outline what is to be analysed, they forget about half the stuff. Or they forget to tell me, well, what heavy metals or what VOCs. So just do a check when you produce your table, check it back against the background information that you provided, and that you have listed everything that should be there. Okay, so that's easy in terms of the analysis. The only other thing is labour.
Sorry, Liz, can I ask you a quick question before we move on? So the heavy metal analysis, that was for your testing for, say, like iron or lead in the water. And then
and
that was for
also in the sediment.
Would they be separate? Would they check the water and then sediment? They be separate kind of costs?
Absolutely. You have
Okay.
a cost, maybe €40 for a scan on water, another €40 for a scan on the sediment. And then the general water chemistry that I mentioned, the nutrients, if you think that's needed, certainly alkalinity, pH, BOD, those would be about, if you have 10 of those determinants. So I think roughly if you think about it as nearly €5 per determinant, that's an average cost.
Okay, thanks.
And sorry, when we take a sediment sample for heavy metals, that doesn't increase the price depending on how many heavy metals we're analysing, or?
Well, there is a cost for the analysis on those sediment samples, and that's what I'm saying. Generally 5 or 6 heavy metals cost you about €40 per sample. So that's an extra cost. You have a cost for the general water chemistry, you have a cost for the metals in the water, you have a cost for the metals in the sediment, and you have a cost for metals in the undetected gammates, and do metal tissue analysis there. Yeah, so it all adds up, and that's what I really want to show you, is just how expensive some of this can be. Because you have the number of dates and then multiplying by the costs. Number of sites by the number of dates that you collect on by the cost then. So it might be, say, 5 sites collecting water chemistry on 6 dates, so 5 by 6, that's 30 by 40, that's the cost of, say, the water chemistry. Okay, so the next thing then is labour costs. So you're going to have to work out how many days are needed. Easy for the collection of the water from the river. So if you're going on 6 dates and you have 2 people, that's 12 person days. So you probably have a senior person and a field assistant. The senior person could cost you €350 per day. The other person could cost you €200 per day. So if you take those as rough costs, 300 and 200 per day. Now, so it's easy to estimate the fieldwork time. It's a little bit harder when it comes to the laboratory work. So all of the analysis you're sending out, so you're not caught, there's no labour element where you're paying for them in the laboratory. But where you have the labour element is in processing, say, the invertebrate samples. And that, see what's the best way to think about this. If you're taking your 2-minute multi-habitat kick sample, it's generally to get your water quality, and you're doing those on 5 sites. It'd take 2 days probably to sort those samples and 2 days to identify what's in them. So that's 4 labour days, 4 person days for processing the invertebrate sample. And then you have to allow a number of days for data analysis of your water chemistry data, heavy metal data, and so on. And you might need, up to 6-7 days for that. And that's person days, and that's probably at the €350 per day mark. Okay. And I think that's most of the elements covered in. Am I missing anything?
Is the travel fee per vehicle? So if the 2 people travel together, it's 1.
2 people travel together per vehicle.
Okay.
Yeah. So the only thing is the subsistence rates. But actually, you can see those if you go onto the UCD website and you Google travel and subsistence. It'll give you the travel and subsistence rates. I think it's about €16 for under 10-hour day for subsistence. That's enough to buy your lunch, essentially.
And Mary?
Yep.
You know the equipment that you would use to like gather all the like samples and all that. Is it just presumed that they would just own that already, or would you have to like buy it or something?
Yeah, so you can say that, you know, this costing is based on the assumption that all equipment needed for collection of samples is available in the company. Yeah, that could be an extra cost if the company had to hire that equipment, but we're assuming that it's all there. Yep. So the only other thing then to do is to your total add 21% VAT. We'll assume this company is not charging overheads because that can be quite variable. So we're not going to ask you to put overheads on, it's just 21% VAT, and that gives you your total. So as I said, it's just an exercise in the reality of cost and something. So that if you were employed, you could at least attempt it and know the elements that need to go into it. Okay, so whoever in the group is good at the sums can make the spreadsheet. Okay, any other questions that I need to deal with?
That's 350 euro. That's to process the biological samples, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So the only thing that's cheaper is the field assistant, which we're putting in at 200 a day. Yeah. Everything else takes a bit of expertise, and therefore is charged at that rate, roughly that rate, taking an average price.
For the biological sampling, would we have to sample macrophytes?
If you want to justify it, that can be recorded in the field. That's one option. So you need to cover up the different macrophytes, but you have to be able to justify that based on the potential pollutants and whether they would indicate any issue.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, for example, one idea is to do the gammates for heavy metals, but equally you could do moss samples for heavy metals.
Okay.
But you don't want to give everything, you have to keep it reasonable as to what might give you the best indication of potential impact of that point discharge.
Yeah. And say for the heavy metals, you could sample fish, but you could also sample the crayfish. Would that be too much, like going overboard?
There may be crayfish there, and you might have to do, it's a good point because you're dealing with the limestone area, so there's likely to be crayfish. So with the crayfish, you would be sampling the population, trying to estimate the size of the population, and that can be done using your trappy traps and catch per unit effort. You won't be sampling them for tissue analysis because that's protected species.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, there you go. Everybody's okay. Yeah, you might think of any more questions. You can send them to me and I can answer them. Or if you need another session before you complete it, just try and set up a quick session like that. It's no problem.
Mary, and the biomonitoring program is worth 7%, is it?
It's probably about that. Yeah, I can't remember. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
that's one way to think about it, but the way that I think about it is, okay, you get some training and the experience. So that's why I'm keeping it short. And I picked road runoff because it's just such a complex effluent that it forces you to think about all the potential pollutants that are coming in. Everything else okay?
Sorry, Mary, I have one question. You're saying you have to think about the potential pollutants, but we're limited to what's in our Excel. So do we have a discussion in a report, if that makes sense? Saying
Say that again.
So you were saying we have to go over potential pollutants from the motorway?
Yeah, because that's going to tell you what you should be analysing for.
But aren't we limited to the results from our macroinvertebrates?
No, I think we're mixing up two things. This is the road runoff monitoring program that I'm talking about.
So we don't have results for this?
No.
Okay,
You're
sorry, I
designing
thought we had a linked
program.
results page. Okay, great.
No, that's the chemistry report. That's a separate issue. You've been given results for that. You work with those results.
Yeah,
and
that's
actually,
fine.
Liz is going to send you the results of what you got in your own laboratory analysis. I'm just curious to have a look and see how they compare it. You don't have to put them into the report, put them into your lab notebook, but it's just useful to make a comparison with them and to think about what they're indicating and just put a few notes in your
Yep, thank you.
Is that okay? Yeah. We're talking about so many reports here and exercises that I'm not surprised they're all mixed up.
That reminds me, actually, you sent us last week, I think, nutrient and pH and stuff like that, numbers for the 4 river sites. Are they, should we also be using them for the chemistry report?
That's the only thing you use for the chemistry report. The data that I have sent you, not the data that you're generating from this.
So I think I've asked wrong. I can't remember what everything is called. The one where we sent you the draft last week and we have to do the final.
The draft bioassessment report is based on the invertebrates, yeah?
Yeah. And the chemical, the water information that you sent us last week, should that be included?
You can just use that to comment on the water chemistry, but the data that I sent you is what you use in the chemistry report.
Okay.
Right?
Perfect.
And the reason I want you to use those data is that there's averages and ranges given there. So you're in a better position to comment with respect to the thresholds. Right? So I give it for the 4 sites and I give you an extra file which was for the campus stream for you to look at unionized ammonia. So that's the 2 files you're thinking of. Yeah. So that's what goes into the chemistry report. What Liz has generated with you this week, you just put it into your lab notebook and write a few comments on it. Because I wanted to give you the chemistry data so that you had it in plenty of time.
And Mary, maybe you've already given this to us. Do we have an outline of like the headings that we need inside the chemistry report?
I think that is in one of them. Yeah, it should be. If you can't find it, send it to me again. So it's a standard report, a little bit of background. There's 30 sites, which will be the same as your other one. The methods will be as you did them in the labs, and then the results. So you can probably best to present the results per determinant, and then when you come to the discussion, bring the results per river. So you'll be able to say, for example, that the Glencullen River is well oxygenated, all of the nutrient levels are low or below the level of detection, and there's no indication of water quality problem. I'm making this up now, and so on going along. And in contrast, then you'll probably see that the Avoca is an acidic system due to acid mine drainage, pH consistently low, and then whatever else is pointed out. And then the campus stream is going to have some nutrient problems. Yeah, so results per determinant, and then conclusions per, or discussion per river.
Okay, thank you.
And that can be short, and then everybody does the individual abstract, which is no more than 1 page. Very good. Okay. Final questions? All right. Leave it at that. Okay, good. And send me an email if you have anything else.
Thank you.
Send me an email if you have anything else.
Thank you.